Hey guys, welcome back to a new video. So guys, today we are reading a book which is Napoleon Hill, The Golden Rule of Success. So without wasting any time, let's start it reading. So we are on its chapter 10. Chapter 10. Some interesting facts concerning character analysis. This is the first in a series of articles on the interesting subject of character analysis. This article is based upon actual facts gathered and classified from the analysis of over 10,000 people representing nearly every calling in all walks of life. A young man stepped into my office 5 years ago and asked abruptly, "What can you do for a down and outer?" The young fellow looked the part. His accent, however, really betrayed his schooling. He had an easy, fluent flow of English, which told me that his plight was not due to lack of training. I handed him an analysis chart and seated him at the desk, with instructions to fill it out carefully, then turned to interview my next visitor. Ordinarily, the time required to properly fill out the personal analysis chart that I use will average about 30 minutes. In 15 minutes, the young man was back at my desk with the chart neatly filled out. I looked at the chart, folded it out without looking at it, laid it on the desk before me, extended my hand to the young man, and I said to him, "I want to congratulate you on account of your unusual ability to concentrate your mind on whatever you are doing until it has been finished. I also want to congratulate you on account of your unusual enthusiasm. With these two qualities as well developed as they are in you, I feel that my task in analyzing you and starting you on the road to success is a comparatively easy one." The young man blushed, stammered something about being down on his luck, and started to tell me why he had never been able to advance in any position. But I stopped him. I saw as clearly as I might have seen the sun on a bright day the reason why, in spite of the fact that I not unfolded his personal analysis chart. I turned to the chart and began to read the subtle story that he told, every paragraph, every line, and every word of which corroborated the story that I had already read from the few remarks he made when he came into the office. This young man was an interesting case because he is typical of that class, running into the hundreds of thousands who go through life dismal failures largely on account of one shortcoming, a shortcoming that can be eliminated in 991 out of every 1,000 cases. Let me give you a brief resume of what that personal analysis chart disclosed. First of all, it disclosed the fact that the young man had a splendid schooling, including 3 years of college work and a special course in a leading university. It also disclosed the fact that he had a quick brain, that he had the ability to analyze correctly, that he was far above the average as a thinker, that he had an unusually attractive personality, that what he was not afraid of work. In fact, he had all the essential qualities for success, except one, and that was the self-confidence. Before I was halfway through analyzing him, I asked this question: if you were offered a position as principal of a high school at $3,000 a year, would you accept it? He hesitated, turned his head from side to side for a few moments, and then started to say something. But I stopped him with, "Thanks, I thought not." He protested that he had not given me his answer yes, but I begged to leave to inform that he had answered me when he hesitated. He then insisted on stating his case in these words: "No, it is like this. If I thought I could hold the job, I would accept it. But I never earned as much as $3,000 a year, and therefore I doubt that I could not hold on that sort of a job." I closed my eyes for a moment and looked back into the dim past. I saw myself in the place of the young man before me. I knew exactly how he felt, how and why he felt that way. I went ahead with my analysis until I completed it and formulated my plan for shaking him out of the rut into which he had drifted. The completed analysis showed just 2 points of contact at which I had to take hold of that young man. Just two weaknesses. But these two were the most dangerous of the score or more that pieced the pathway of the average person who fails to get ahead in life. These two weaknesses were lack of self-confidence, as I have already stated, and lack of a definite purpose in life. My work heretofore was reduced by the process of elimination to the task of helping the young man find the particular kind of work for which he was best fitted by temperament, physical build, training, and natural inclination, and to helping him develop the self-confidence necessary to pursue that work to success. I have selected this particular case because it represents nearly 75% of all whom I analyzed, and about the same percentage of the 10,000 men and women whom I analyzed in the past. We want to hear the truth about ourselves, but woe be unto the one who hands it to us without a sugar coating. All salesmen will do well to remember that no one wants anything that someone else is trying to get rid of. If you must keep your troubles alive, plant them under 6 feet of soil, and be careful to forget the burying place. The modus operandi through which this young man was treated on the road to success. I began first the task of finding the life work in which he would enjoy his great success, a matter quite easily determined in 99 out of 100 cases. The process through which this data is secured automatically reduced the possible line of work to three, one of which was a line of work in which the young man had no experience whatsoever. The other two lines he had tried without success. By applying the test that I used in case of this kind, I decided to try the young man out in the work in which he had no experience. When I made known to him by my decision, he said, "That's Willie. I always did wish I might engage in sort of that work, but I never believed I could do it." Those words relieved me to a large extent of the work I could have not to do in preparing him for the work that I had selected, because they told me in no uncertain terms that the young man himself would automatically help in developing self-confidence, because I had prescribed work into which he could throw his whole heart and soul. This brings me to a suitable place at which to say that one of the most interesting things I have learned from character analysis is the fact that a person will succeed when properly analyzed, classified, and given work that he loves. I look upon this work of analyzing character and fitting men and women to jobs as being more than an economic issue. It helps men and women find the greatest things in life, happiness. If viewed from a business standpoint, the work is not profitable, but if viewed from the standpoint of service rendered to one's fellow men who need it and the happiness that comes from such service, its value is priceless. I believe it's a concentrative statement when I say that success can be guaranteed in 100% of the cases where a man or woman can be properly guided in the selection and pursuit of a definite purpose of life, and sufficient self-confidence can be developed with which to pursue that purpose to a finish. I cannot recall a single client I have served in whom immediate and satisfactory results were not noticeable, excepting those in whom self-confidence could not be developed, and those who could not be persuaded to follow the work for which they were best fitted. Some people are so negatively lacking in self-confidence and an ability to concentrate their attention on one line of work that success is impossible. Some of the negative qualities that stand between man and woman and success. I began the analysis of men and women over 10 years ago. As part of my research work in the field of psychology, at that time I had no notation of serving professionally in the field of character analysis. The information disclosed, as I begin to classify and record the common weakness of thousands of people, really told me that this is one of the greatest fields of human endeavor, a field in which a great service can be rendered to humanity. In- Incidentally, the startling facts disclosed in this analysis work have played an important part in my own life and have laid the foundation for most of the editorials that I have written. One of the most startling things I discovered after I had analysis and classified the first 1,000 people was that 95% of them had no definite aim in life. Not one of those who had no definite aim was successful, but a few of them were earning a satisfactory living. Another startling thing was discovered in connection with the fact, namely, that the majority of those whom I analyzed immediately saw their weakness of not having a definite aim in life and its effect on their progress merely by filling out the personal analysis chart. One woman of excellent education, cultured and refined, who had found it necessary to drift from one thing to another until she was then doing ordinary house cleaning, as exclaimed jubilantly, "That's been my trouble all in my life." When she came to this question in the personal analysis chart that reads as follows: have you a definite aim in life? And if so, state what it is in detail, and when and how you expect to attain it. This woman became so enthusiastic over the new reservoir of thought that this question had developed in her brain. As she explained it, that she insisted on stopping the analysis right there. She said there was no use of analyzing any further, that she had found her weakness and would promptly eliminate it and return to see me again. Uh, She went away and I did not hear from her for nearly a year. One day I received a package from her in which she enclosed some samples of her work. She had become a writer of specialty advertising copy, and those samples really disclosed that she had selected the right vocation. She is now with one of the largest agencies in the country. I do not know what salary she receives, but she informs me that she soon will have her own home paid for out of her saving from her work. Best of all, she added this remark, and I am happier than I ever thought a person could be. I have founded my place in the world, and my work is not a work at all. It is play, and I love it. And I love it. Those words told the whole story. But not at all cases there are so easily handled as was this woman. With reference to the selection of a chief aim in life, most of them have drifted so long that they have not only lost hope of finding the work for which they are best fitted, the work that they love and will follow to the exclusion of all else, but they have also lost or never enjoyed the necessary self-confidence with which to follow the work when discovered. Another negative quality that I found standing in the way of nearly all whom I analyzed is lack of initiative. They had never seen the importance of doing more than was required of them, or of inviting themselves into leadership now and then. The personal analysis chart that I use is so arranged that it really discloses whether or not a person has self-control. The majority of those whom I analyzed lacked self-control. They allowed themselves to be swayed by their emotion and passion just as a gust of wind would saw blades of grass. In the entire 4,000 people analyzed, I found only one person who exercised enough self-control to enable him to stay with his job in spite of all disagreeable circumstances, that might arise from day to day to make him want to quit. Incidentally, this man is now holding one of the most important jobs with one of the great steel companies. At the time of this analysis, he was working with the same company as a laborer in the mills. The chief reason that lack of self-control stands in the way of success is that a person who lacks it will strike back at every person who offends him, will become angered at every obstacle that places itself in his way, will make remarks that gain him the enmity of his fellow employees and his employers or the public whom he serves, thereby steadily building a host of enemies that finally make his success impossible. No man is wanted in any position if he lacks the self-control that is essential in attracting people to him and causing them to like him. A person may have the technical quality essential for success in a given field of work, but unless that person curbs his temper and exercises self-control, he is doomed to ultimate failure. There is no mere preachment or hypnosis. I'm passing on to you that what was disclosed by actual test and careful analysis. In fact, the chief value of this article is that it is based upon authentic facts arrived at by accurate scientific analysis and classification in over 10,000 cases. Another disagreeable and destructive tendency of those who lack self-control is that of slandering their fellowmen. My experience in personal analysis work has done more to curb my own tongue than anything that has ever happened, because it has shown me what must be the fate of all who indulge in slandering another person's. Wait a minute. No matter what they be the provocation for doing so. I would place my hands on a person afflicted with leprosy just as quickly as I would go into another person's family's closest and drag out his family skeleton or slander him in any way or with or without cause. In one case, physically death will be certain. In the other, a more dreaded death would be just as sure, moral death. Another startling discovery I made was the common tendency among men and women to hate one another on account of difference in religious belief, politics, race, and the like. Lack of tolerance showed itself in nearly every case. I have analyzed that this had a marked effect in keeping the person in poverty and failure. The greatest facts learned from character analysis. Probably the greatest truth that I uncovered in my personal analysis was the fact that most of those analyzed had not discovered the principle underlying the practice of rendering more service and better service than actually paid for. The president of a correspondence school engaged me to analyze his employees. He was so impressed with the information disclosed in connection with this common weakness of giving as little as possible and demanding as much as possible, that he called me into his office and informed me that his employers were not the only ones in his organization who were guilty of this weakness, that the school itself had been guilty of the same mistake, and as a result of the facts disclosed, he intended to revise his educational system, not only giving his students more service and better service than they were paying for, but going still further and passing the same thought on the students through a special designed lesson for that purpose, so that they in turn would render that sort of service. Of the 10,000 men and women whom I analyzed, I have never yet known of a single person who succeeded by delivering less service and a poorer of quality than that contracted for. A young man whom I once analyzed was then working as stenographer in the offices of Pennsylvania Railroad Company. He had a very fine analysis with one acceptation. He said, "No, I do not believe in delivering more service or better service than is paid for, because my experience with the railroad company has taught me that This does not pay. They will keep a man in one job until he is grey-headed if he doesn't work his will. I had never seen this young man, but the photographs he sent with his personal analysis chart disclosed that he was a fine specimen, with a broad, well-extended forehead and an unusually large square jaw and chin, the positive, aggressive fighting type. Instead of reporting on his analysis by letter, as was my custom to do in out-of-town cases, I wrote the young man and requested him to come to Chicago for a visit with me in person. He arrived one Sunday morning and I met him at my house. I told him a little story after he was comfortably seated in the library as follows. I have brought you to all the way from Pittsburgh to tell you this little story, with the hope that it will be worth more to you than anything that ever happened in your life. His face brightened up and his eyes sparkled with anticipation as I proceeded. I know a young lad who worked in a coal mine. His job was that of water boy. After making his round with his water bucket, he would go over to the table and help the drivers out by hitching molds to the empty cars that were to be hauled back into the mines, while the drivers were dumping the loaded cars. One day the president of the company that owned the mines come along, saw this young lad and asked him who gave him a driver's job. The lad replied, "Nobody gave it to me. I just took it up to keep me busy while I'm not carrying water." He asked the lad how much he was getting for that extra work, to which he replied, "Nothing, I like it." Now it may interest you to know that the president of that coal company took this lad out of the mines, gave him a job in the office and arranged for him to attend night school. Today he is known in every English-speaking country in the world and recognized as one of the leading men in his line of work, all because he was willing to do more than he was paid for. The young man's eyes dropped to the floor. He thought for several seconds, then looked up with a smile on his face and said, "I understand the application. I will go back to Pittsburgh and make use of the point." Today this young man holds one of the most responsible jobs with one of the big packing houses of the country, having made up his mind with that a railroad business offered limited opportunity to put into practice the habit of performing more work and better work than is paid for. He changed jobs and went with a concern where he thought such service would be more quickly recognized. His rise was quick. He attributed his success entirely to that one single turning point in his life. Character analysis is the most interesting work in the world. It uncovers the highlights of human nature and shows clearly those qualities that tear down as well as those that build up. It touches one of the most interesting studies in the world, the study of man. After analyzing a few thousand men and women, I learned to classify people as to certain tendencies just from their personal appearance, the lines in their faces, etc., before examining their analysis chart as an examples of the characteristics that indicate one's tendencies. Let me cite this case. I once analyzed to a man to whom I pointed out of his chief weakness before he had taken his seat in my office and before he had spoken more than a dozen words. When he announced himself, he said in a low apologetic voice, "Pardon me for intruding, but I would like to know if you can tell me why I don't get ahead in my job." I looked up at the man. He was standing with his cap in his hands and with a look on his face that clearly showed he lacked aggressiveness and self-confidence. He had even apologized for being in my office. It did not require very deep analysis to see that all who wished could ride that fellow and take advantage of him on every occasion. As he took his seat, I replied to his question by saying, "Yes, I can tell you one reason that you got ahead, and that is because you allow people to impose on you." Quickly he asked, "Has my wife been telling you about me?" I told him I had never seen his wife and did not even know his name. that I answered his question from what I saw written in his face, from the question he had asked, the tone in which he had asked, and his general demeanor, all of which clearly indicated that he permitted people to take advantage of him at all. He admitted that my guess was a good one, but it was no guess. There are certain tendencies so clearly written in the human face, in the voice, and in the personal carriage of one's body that all whom will may analyze and read. In character analysis, I govern my recommendation largely by the law of cause and effect. I know what are the chief causes for failure, and I have found out how these causes may be replaced by those more desirable ones that ensure success. It is a comparatively simple process to analyze and ascertain which particular negative causes are standing in a person's way. And when this analysis is made and the negative causes replaced by positive ones, the inevitable result is a change also in the effect from failure to success. Another thing I discovered from character analysis is that in most cases only a slight change is necessary to replace failure with success. Not two causes can be handled in exactly the same manner. Usually, however, some more or less spectacular method must be employed in arousing a person sufficiently to bounce him out of the negative habit that is standing between him and success. It is seldom sufficient merely to tell a person what is wrong and how to correct it. Some telling parallel must be drawn, some case cited, some illustration used that will show a person his own weakness by showing him the same weakness in another. The reason for this is simple. It is because most of us refuse to face facts concerning ourselves unless those facts are agreeable ones. I had made several permanent and a considerable larger number of temporary enemies by analyzing men and women and frankly telling them what the analysis disclosed, which I am reminded to state gave me another slant on human nature, namely that most of us love to be flattered, but seldom will we hear the truth without resentment if it happens not to appeal to our vanity. Once a man came to see me who wanted to change his trade to please his wife. He was a carpenter and had been working at that trade for 10 years. He had done fairly well, having saved enough to build his own home. But his wife thought that carpentry was not the work for him, so she had urged him to take up something more dignified. His analysis showed that he was engaged in the work most suitable for him, with the possible acceptation that he could have advanced into contracting and building, thereby earning more money while still availing himself of his years of experience without changing his line entirely. In my analysis, I talked rather plainly about women who, for the sake of pride, try to urge a man to quit the work that was given him a living and a jump, without preparation into something in which he lacked experience and for which he has no desire. My frankness made him angry. He went away and I did not hear him for several weeks. One afternoon, his wife came to see me. She said that he came from home and told her for word what I had said. At first she was angered, but as she cooled down and thought it over, she saw the reason for my recommendation and she, too, urged her husband to remain in his trade, but to take on a small contract and see how he came out with. He had just completed his first contract and the result was what brought her to my office. He had clearly a little over $1,100 on the job and was now engaged in business with a well-known contractor and builder who had a going business. They were both happy and everything was lovely. Some have gone away without coming back. Perhaps my frankness served him. Maybe not. At any rate, I believe that the truth, even though it may hurt, is what a person ought to have when considerably changed in work or taking up a light work. A person a person works take up 6 days out of every 7. If that work brings happiness and success, all well and good, but if not, then 6/7 of that person's life is wasted. I hope to see the time come when every public school will carefully chart and analyze every student who goes through, recommending at the end of the course the work to which the student ought to give preference. I believe the time will arrive when this sort of service will be so strongly demanded that it will be supplied. It would be impossible to be 100% perfect in these analyses due to the youthfulness of the children, but they would form the foundation upon which a more accurate analysis could be made after the child had worked along enough to bring out their natural inclination. Under the simple system that I have used in my character analysis work and personal analysis test, I would guarantee a reasonable degree of success in every case analyzed if my recommendation were followed, providing the person analyzed is mature in age and has had opportunity to try his or her hand at sufficient kinds of work to bring out natural tendency and native ability. Whew. So, thanks for watching this video. I hope that you liked it. If you're listening this time, so hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe. So we had completed its chapter 10. Now we'll come on the chapter 11. So the chapter 11 is success. So thanks for watching this video. Bye bye. See you in next videos.